Hi, this is going to be an actual play tutorial. This is Abraham El Jaguar, a professional game master. With this actual play tutorial, I am going to show you how to use the FlexAI Guidebook, which is perhaps the best current tool when it comes to running solo role-playing game combats. For those of you that do not know, the different enemies can be divided in types. And these types are going to react accordingly depending on the situation of the battlefield. If they are wounded, if they are surrounded, if they are ambushed. All of the tables here allow you to handle those situations. And you also have tables to determine the social responses of different non-player characters. So it is an amazing book. But some people could feel a bit intimidated because of the size. I am also going to show you how to use the FlexAL Solo Adventuring Toolkit, another mammoth tome, quite intimidating for some. But as you can see, you don't need to use all of the pages in a single session, all of the sections, just the ones that are appropriate for the sort of session that you are going to run. Of course, if you want to keep things a bit more simple, you could use the Mythic Game Master Emulator 2nd edition, or perhaps even the free TriCube Tales emulator. It all depends on what you are looking for. Personally, I love complexity in tabletop role-playing games. I also play rules light sessions, but sometimes I have that itch to get the brain working. So I'm going to show you how to use these powerful books. And I'm also going to use the Dungeon Tactics Tabletop RPG. This is a diceless system. This book definitely needs an errata. There are so many errors, especially when it comes to the values or the stats. In the case of the enemies, the Barbarian. Which one was it? No, the Brute. What's the name of this guy? Ah, yes, the Barbarian. You have Arcana as your second stat. That is the second best stat. Nonsensical. It has nothing to do with this enemy archetype. It should be Vitality. When you compare it to the other tables in the character creation process, that is for the player characters, it makes more sense. So there are definitely errors here. There are also errors when it comes to the Rogue. You have Arcana again as your second stat. It should be Might. When comparing it to the player character tables, it all makes sense. So for a beginner in tabletop RPGs, this is going to be very difficult to make sense of. Just look, the Scoundrel. First stat, Perception, of course. Second stat, Might. And Arcana is your fourth stat, your worst stat, because you are not a wizard. I don't know if it was an error of editing or in the development process. And the abilities need some clarifications. In the case of the Scoundrel, you have this ability, well, it basically allows you to become invisible. Slip away. You are considered to be in stealth until you are within vision range of an enemy. How is stealth going to be useful if the enemy looks at you and now you are out of stealth? So even if you are hiding, you are out of stealth. Because stealth allows you to be unaffected by the special abilities of the other characters. So it would make more sense if you had like a little line here that said, the stealth is broken at the end of your turn or that enemy's turn. Then it makes sense. You are in stealth, the enemy approaches you, but until the next turn, they cannot use abilities against you. There need to be some corrections there. Because you could also always be using stealth all the time and not be affected by abilities. Perhaps it could be handled in other ways. But suffice to say, there needs to be some clarifications. For this particular session, I'm going to be employing a group composed of 3 characters. I have I have my map set up here. I don't want to move everything around because things are going to get quite messy. But I have some miniatures to represent the enemies. I have miniatures to represent the player characters. The first player character is going to be Nebulon. Nebulon is a sage, basically a psychic or psionic user. He's this wizard-looking guy dressed in bones because he thinks that the bones have special properties to awaken the powers of your mind. He has taken shelter or temporary refuge in an abandoned cabin next to a burial site. So that's how he obtains his psychic powers. He looks almost like a necromancer. And you also have Gelid. Gelid is a frost lord. He's dressed like your typical executioner, you know, with the black hood. In the case of Nebulon, he has this cowl over his head, but Gelid has this entire hood covering his head, only two holes for the eyes. He's dressed like an executioner, but in blue and dark purple in colors, because this is supposed to be a video game. For those that haven't noticed, Dungeon Tactics is supposed to be, let's see if I can get that into focus, supposed to represent that Japanese video game tactical RPG experience. So the characters look pixelated. I am envisioning everything like pixel art in video games. In the case of Nebulon, his clothes are black and white. And Gelid seeks to discover, unravel the mysteries of the power of ice. He went into this cave that is rumored to have magical ice powers to imbue his two-headed axe, his double axe. Double-headed axe, I think that's the correct name. I forgot at the moment. Battle axe, let's call it a battle axe. With the power of ice, but as an error, he disturbed an ice fiend. Minor ice fiend, but still quite powerful, and now he's running around out of the cavern with this ice fiend chasing him. Luckily for him, we have our other protagonist, which is Kroos. Kroos is a warrior. He used to belong to a company of mercenaries. They all got wiped out. He was the only survivor. He's dressed almost like a tin can, armored to the bone completely with a shield and his sword. The shield has a big orange cross in the center. And his shoulder pads are huge. He has this almost like a bucket type of helmet. And he's always looking for a fight and looking for opportunities for profit because he's without his mercenary company. He's the only survivor. So he encountered Gelid as he was fleeing the Ice Fiend. And because he's always looking to challenge himself in battles, he went at it with the Ice Fiend. Gelid turned around and saw Kroos fighting with the Ice Fiend, and he decided to go back and just fight the Ice Fiend out of pure anger and revenge. And they both fought against it. They couldn't win. They decided to run away. And they found this abandoned cabin, apparently abandoned cabin, which was actually the cabin of Nebulon. They made their way inside, broke the door down, got inside, started to pile up things to keep the fiend outside. Nebulon was quite surprised. They didn't know what was happening, but the fiend got inside the cabin. Either way, he froze the door and all the furniture that were piled up against the door, broke them to pieces, and now the three had to fight the Ice Fiend. This is not the actual play yet. This is just like the background. And they actually managed to win. So now they saw that they worked great together. They decided to team up and they formed their adventuring group. They went into the Adventurers Guild nearby and they saw this post of defeating this orc boss that is terrorizing the area by the name of Barash. And Barash is leading goblins and orcs. There's also a side quest. For each pair of goblin ears, you're going to get monetary compensation. So they are also looking to kill goblins, to cut off those ears and exchange them, trade them for gold. So now they are off into their adventure going to the forest of never return, because people are always going missing there. Perhaps because of the orcs and goblins, who know? We shall discover, maybe. I'm going to be handling things in third person to create that video game type of experience where you are looking at the characters, the pixel characters moving in the screen, but at the same time I am also going to be experiencing that pixel world. So it's very surreal. And so it begins. The group moves into the forest, making their way through the thick shrubbery and trees. I now take the FlexAI Solo Adventuring Toolkit to determine what they encounter. An obstacle and a non-player character. I now roll to determine the obstacle. The group stumbled upon a cloud of noxious gas, just floating there, supernaturally so. Now I roll to determine the non-player character that they encountered. A dwarf, dressed like a typical lumberjack. Nebulon approaches and speaks. "Hello, good dwarf. What is this cloud? We are looking for Varash and his goblins. Have you seen them?" Now we roll to see the response. We switch to the FlexAI Guidebook. In fact, let's use the FlexAI Solo Adventuring Toolkit, because at the back you have a simplified response. We have yet to determine exactly what this dwarf is all about. A bystander. Here they have the simplified table as an acquaintance. We'll go with that. Diplomacy. The dwarf turns around and says, "Nebulon, is that you?" Jellied responds, "Ah, Nebulon, don't you recognize your own friends?" And Cruz replies, "Well, the forest is not exactly the most illuminated of places. Don't be too harsh on our friend." Nebulon speaks. "Ah, could you be Troppy, the dwarf? Ah, yes, I remember you. You are constantly cutting wood around these parts. Tell me, friend, have you seen Varash?" Now we switch to the FlexAI Guidebook. He's an ally, so we go to ally. The passing by table. Nebulon, I wish you had better eyesight. I feel offended that you did not recognize me. We obtain diplomacy. Now, for the whereabouts of Varash. We now roll on the positive table of success because they are acquaintances. Answer willing. I'll interpret that as a positive. If you go around this noxious cloud, you will encounter Varash, surely. Cruz responds. That's Varash. Pronunciation is very important. But thank you. Nebulon also speaks. Well, we will lead you to your devices, friend. We need to encounter that orc and more goblins if possible. We are collecting their ears. And the dwarf responds. Very well, off you go. And so they continue their journey. Because of their positive interaction, now they have a bonus when it comes to the random encounters, if they run into enemies. The group proceeds, taking a north bend around the noxious gas or poison, which the dwarf was not able to explain. What is the source of that poison? The adventurers continue. I once again roll to see the encounters, the things that they encounter in their journey. Obstacle and combat encounter. We now roll on the forest features table to determine the obstacle. Reroll with advantage. Plants. So this area could contain shrubbery, flowers, and the terrain is somewhat difficult to traverse. Before we continue with the determining about the enemies, we roll on the terrain and encounter. I am using the first section of the Solo Adventuring Toolkit. Even though it's for dungeons, I will adapt it to the dungeon environment with the wilderness environment. There are several obstacles in the form of rocks, trees, shrubbery. So I'm going to build them according to the diagram to the best of my ability. There is a river traversing the entire place on the south part. There is a huge rock in the north section. Some rocks on the western side. Thorny plants on the east side. Now we are going to determine where the characters begin. Because in video game, a strategy JRPG type of scenarios, sometimes they just toss you into the action and you have no idea where you're going to end up. You have these missions, these like Final Fantasy Tactics sort of missions, where your characters are all over the place. They tell you to escort or protect someone, and you start in the most nonsensical locations, but that's part of the challenge of working with what you have. I have organized things by coordinates. So now I know that Crows is just next to the thorny plants on the east part. Nebulon is next to the boulders in the western section. And when it comes to Gelid, he is on top of the huge boulder or stone, rather like a rocky formation on the northern part. But what did they encounter during their journeys? We're going to roll that. Remember, this is a tutorial. It is important for me to explain the process. Otherwise, it will be useless. I am rolling with a bonus because of the information gathered. There is a good chance of getting closer to Varish. 4 goblins. As the group was searching for goblins and Varish, they heard noises all around them. It's an ambush. Now we are determining the places where the goblins are located. One is close to the crows on the eastern side, next to the thorny plants. The other one is in the river. Obviously, that is difficult to traverse terrain. The other goblin is close to the boulder in the north part. The last goblin is on the west section near the boulder. The goblins hiss and cackle. The fight begins. Follow initiative. With a quick gesture, Nebulon moves closer to the goblin. And unleashes a blast from his orb that shines with various colors. Remember that this is a diceless system, dealing Arcana +1 damage. The goblin is severely wounded. The shining beam of light that was projected from the orb impacts the goblin, and the goblin is actually slain. Ah! I point out keep track of the action points spent. Now is a chance for Jelly to act. He moves closer to the goblin and lets his axe fall, splitting the goblin in two. The goblin is slain. And now, Cruz has his chance to act. Moving closer to the goblin near the river, and stabs with his sword, striking the goblin just below the neck. Killing it. The goblin is dead. Now things got really interesting because the goblin is alone. We are going to use the FlexAI Guidebook. The goblin, and I will give you further explanations on how I handle things at the end of this session. The goblin is classified as a lurker minion, and he was fresh in normal conditions, but now his friends have been killed. He is overwhelmed. I roll using that section. He decides to flee. The goblin escapes the fight. Cruz says, "Well, those goblins were quite easy to defeat, don't you think, my friends?" And Jellit speaks, "I am just too powerful." And Nebulon replies, "Don't get too cocky, my friends. We still have to continue further. Varash is surely somewhere within this forest of no return." And this concludes this part of the session, or rather the campaign, the adventure. As you can see, it is all very easy. It took me about 27, no, less than that, because I gave an explanation at the start. Just perhaps less than 20 minutes, or 20 minutes more or less. These books are very easy to handle when you have separated using bookmarks, or in my case I used pieces of paper to determine the various tactics, the responses, the diplomacy, anything, social interactions. So don't feel intimidated because you have some huge tomes. You can prepare even more beforehand. In my case, I am not too troubled, that's how would you call it, or annoyed when it comes to having everything prepared. But in your case, you could even prepare more than me. You could have so many sections already prepared beforehand, and the writing the page numbers in order to speed things up even more. This actual play actually was effectively longer because I was giving those explanations. And just go with the flow. Just go with it. Preserve that sense of continuation, of flow, uninterrupted flow. Just keep on going, keep on playing, keep on going. In the case of the Dungeon Tactics, it's a very simple system, diceless. The resolutions are going to be handled so easily. As you can see, it is highly tactical. Everything was resolved immediately. So I encourage you to use these tomes, the FlexAL Solo Adventuring Toolkit, the FlexAI Guidebook. Perhaps next week I will continue with this adventure. It was very fun. I actually, perhaps, well, it all depends on how you visualize things or you experience things when you were watching this video. In my case, I really felt like I was watching like a Final Fantasy Tactics sort of situation. I also had a lot of fun when it comes to interpreting, coming up with interpretations of the positions of the characters, the responses. The tactics were so simple. Today I'm going to be busy with a lot of things. As many of you know, I'm running professional games, so I wish I could have played a bit longer. But like I said, maybe next week I can continue with the adventure. Hopefully they will encounter Barrage. They'll already have a bonus to the encounters, the encounter table. because I am handling things in a typical solo way. If you don't know about this, if you have like an encounter sort of situation, you are making rolls on an encounter table, you could add some bonuses based on the interactions or the battles that you fight to your roll. So I have 8 results, but I am also only rolling with a d6. But because I had that positive interaction with the dwarf, I get a +1 bonus. So I made the d6 roll, and now because I defeated these goblins, if something remarkable happens, perhaps if I roll a 7, that is 6 + 1, 7, or I have another positive interaction with a non-player character, maybe we'll get to the hideout of this orc leader. And now I have killed 3 goblins, so we have 3 pairs of ears to trade or sell when we get back to town. Many things can happen. I am quite excited about this. I hope you found this video encouraging, instructional for you to use these huge tomes. And like I said, it all depends on the complexity that you are looking for. I would say that the Solo Adventuring Toolkit on Further Thoughts is perfect for those solo role players that want to build things from scratch. If you want pre-generated things, so to speak, go for the Mythic Game Master Emulator 2nd edition. But here you have so many puzzle pieces to come up with the perfect way. Or perhaps building blocks, it's a better way to put it. Building blocks to build any encounter. Combat encounter, social encounter, interactions with the environment. You will always feel surprised because of the infinity of possibilities. All of those combinations of tables, of interpretations, of context. Just imagine. Once again, thank you for watching my videos. Thank you for your likes and your comments. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know. And thank you so much to those of you that are going the extra mile to support the channel. If anyone else wishes to further support the channel, the information on how to do that will be in the description below. This has been Abraham El Jaguar, a professional game master. If you want me to run a game for you, please check out the pinned comment below. And remember, roleplay solves everything. Once again, thank you, and see you later.